Hello, this is Inanna. How are y'all today? I'm contacting you as usual to do my daily reading. This time it'll be on the Zulu tribe. Um, what we'll be doing is going over the Zulu tribe in Africa. Um, to understand the religion and the magic of the Zulu, it is necessary to know something of the history background. The Zulu kingdom existed in the independent unit in southeastern Africa, the present province of Natal, in the 19th century. It was established when Chaka Zulu, the chief of a small tribe, conquered many other tribes in the region between 1818 and 1824. So I know y'all have heard of the legendary Chaka Zulu. Who hasn't seen that? I grew up watching Chaka. So the legendary Chaka Zulu has made it into history. You know he did. So while um, the, the repercussions of these events were far reaching, and various nations were created as a direct or indirect result of Shaka's wars. So between 1818 and 1824, he did so much war, they had to do some new recreations of nations. He probably wiped people out. The Boers inflicted a first major defeat on the Zulu, then under one of Shaka's brother in 1838, and took over part of the Zulu territory. The Zulu were finally beaten as a major military power in the region by the British in 1880. So from 1818 to 1880, it was tumultuous times with wars, with it ending with defeat of the Zulu tribe by British. They were then ruled to Keshawayo. Kashawayo. Hello, y'all. Join me on my live feed. Okay, so they were defeated, and then they were ruled by a leader called Keshwayo, the son of another of Shaka's brothers. So first his brother defeated him, and then his nephew defeated him, from a different brother. And then part of the kingdom was ruled by the British, who had taken over Natal from the Boers. And the remainder were divided under independent chiefs, including Chetshawao, who was left with the remnant of his own kingdom. Internecine war between these chiefs led to the British establishing rule over the remainder of the kingdom. The former United Nations was now organized within British and South African administration. But in the 1930s, there was a revival of Zulu nationalism in adherence to the head of the royal house, then established as chief of one of the many small chiefdoms into which Zululand was divided. In the 1960s, Zululand was established as one of the Baptisms under President South African apartheid policy, with the agreement of the legitimate successor of the Zulu kings, now paramount chief. Early Zulu history has been worked out from tribal traditions, from the records of the shipwrecked mariners and from the records of the white travelers, traders, missionaries, and administrators, of whom some English settled among the Zulu in 1825. Zululand is one of the pleasantest regions of Africa. The main part consisting of rolling, well pastured hills lying between the Indian Ocean and the Drakensberg Mountains. The soils were fertile, but are not much eroded. But now they're completely eroded. It has a monsoon climate and and records show that there are bad droughts only once in 5 years, though. Rain often comes in severe thunderstorms accompanied by lightning, of which the forked form is the most dangerous. Then the rivers comes down from the hills in walls of flood. So they get flooded out and they got bad soil. Cattle thrive, though, since the early 1900s. The main crops of the Zulu are sorghum and millet, and in later years, maize and gourds, pulses, and pumpkins. The houses were originally made of grass and a framework of branches, beehive shaped, but later these were replaced by mudded cylinders with a thatched conical roof. The houses were spread in small clusters over the hillside, each inhabited by an extended family. The agnatic lineage, men related to one another by descent through males. The capitals of the kings and the military barracks in which they housed their warriors and their royal women were once inhabited by thousands and were 3 or 4 miles in circumference. They were abolished after the Anglo-Zulu War. So they lived in grass huts at the time of 1900. By 1935, there was whites living among them. And then the British took them by 1835. And then by 1880, they had been completely taken over by the British, but the British left a African king in charge, and the land is constantly beaten over by drought, flood, bad soil, but cows will live. So you just got to find a way to feed them. So then the Zulu tribe went through regicide. Okay. Records show that until late in the 18th century, the region was inhabited by many small tribes, ranging in total population from 500 to perhaps 5,000. The relationships between the tribes oscillated between friendly, peaceable intermarriage and short, sharp skirmishes. The tribes were also split up periodically by civil wars, or sections of a tribe would move off admirably to newfound independence. The system came to an end about the end of the 18th century when a number of stronger tribes, began to extend their way over their neighbors. I wanted to show y'all something. Get to take a quick break. You know, it seems like I can't even read, don't it? But I wish you could see the true problem. I can read. Oh, here you go. Here is my problem. Ta-da. Yeah. I can read really good, but they're broke. I be using them when I'm not on live. I use them anyway. But I gotta get me some more so I can read good, you know. Um, so it says here the relationships between the tribes oscillated between peaceful. They would have sharp skirmishes. The tribes were also split up periodically by civil wars, and sections of a tribe would move off amicably to newfound independence. This system came to an end about the 18th century, which is that's 1900, when a number of stronger tribes began to extend their way over the neighbors' The most plausible explanation for the change is that the population of both human beings and cattle, which breed quickly, increased in the well favored region until it exceeded the carrying capacity of the land under the prevalent methods of the husbandry. So, as they did try to form up and do something, they had a problem with the bad soil and stuff because they outgrew their tribes. I mean, their cattle. So the cattle did do well, but they was eating and growing so fast until they got to the point where they couldn't sustain their livestock. So now, since they couldn't, they said the way they kept them, and they didn't have a lot of food, and the husbandry was just a technique of taking care of them. It wasn't no good, so they wasn't able to even maintain their stock like they should have maintained it. So, a series of battles between dominant tribes took out, and then Shaka, head of the very small tribe, took over the disintegrating kingdom of his overlord when the latter was killed, and in a few years built a great nation of 250,000 people. They were struggling with fire. He built a nation of 250,000 people. His war solved the crisis of overpopulation, and he was successful because he invented more lethal weapons and methods of fighting, as well as new tactics for battle. He was strengthening the army and teaching them battle tactics, something they had never done in a head-hunting tribe. Shaka administered his nation in a system almost, but not absolutely. He was kind of, we've seen the movie, almost, but not absolutely. So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm looking at this and 250 people. He makes super weapons. But let's see what's going to happen. Okay. But not absolutely. Dictated by the system of husbandry, which entailed a widespread dispersal of population. It was divided into counties ruled by chiefs, and some of the counties compromised or comprised defeated tribes. So he had everything broke up into counties, and then he took the people he defeated and put them into the mix too. That's why he grew so large. And the counties were people. He had a country full of people that he had defeated their original homeland. Um, so let's see. They were ruled sometimes by their regular chief or by their heirs, and sometimes by a scion of the chiefly family who was favored by Shaka. So they might not even have their own ruler when he got done with them. Okay, and while occasionally he favored strangers over them, and other countries he constituted out of broken tribes, but by settling people in areas whose inhabitants had been killed or fled, the chiefs appointed there were those who had helped him in his struggles. So what he was doing was basically going in, killing the chiefs or taking them hostage, and then after he did it, he would put his buddy, up there, and those people probably didn't like that. They wanted their own chief. Okay, so Shaka himself had experienced an unhappy childhood. We all seen the movie. His daddy didn't treat him right. Well, for his mother, he had driven from their home. Oh, for his mother and him, he had been driven away. You saw that in the movie. Everybody saw Shaka, but if you didn't, you should go see it because it is good. It is good. He had been driven away from their home, and therefore he killed all his paternal half brothers. So He and his mom got sent away because his dad remarried. They got sent away to another tribe. And when he grew up, he went and killed all of his father's other children. The Zulu were polygamous except for three. He killed all of them except for three. He left three alive, but it must have been 20 because they got multiple wives. He did not give these surviving half brothers counties to rule, but he gave a distant chief in the Zulu royal family such a county. Now, Shaka's major innovation was to organize the men of the kingdom. Regiments consisting of all of the men of a narrow age range, housing them for most of the year in royal barracks. The men were forbidden to marry until their mid 30s, and when they were allowed to marry, a much younger regiment of women, similarly organized, who at that point would be around 23. So he told them they can get married. They had to marry a girl at 23 or around that age. They couldn't just run out and get married. Now, Shaka ruled tyrannously, and 12 years after he acceded to the Zulu chieftainship, he was killed by two of his brothers, one of whom succeeded him. So he left three of them alive. And then two of the three went on and killed him. Okay, and then one of them got on the crown. But this guy was also a tyrant too. And 12 years later, another brother fled with 17,000 people to the Boers with their help, defeated and drove out the king. So they had to take him out the throne. He was crazy. The new king was the last of the generation. He was also the first Zulu king to marry, and he had many wives and sons. 17 years later, the sons of the two queens fought over the succession of the throne, and Keshawo was successful. He ruled to his defeat by the British 23 years later. This assassination of kings and civil wars were endemic in the Zulu nation, as they had been in the earlier polity of small tribes, and this fact was reflected to certain ceremonies. So they wore themselves to death. There's just no other way to put it. They wore themselves to death. The maiden goddess. The Zulu. Now, this is where it's interesting to me. I'm a shaman. I want to know everything about the magical beliefs and the beliefs of people. So I want to know this. So I'm into this part. Okay, so what it says. Oh, and here's a picture of the Zulu tribe. You might have seen them before. Okay. The maiden goddess. Okay, the Zulu had a conception of a high god who broke off the nations from a reed bed, but he plays a little part in their daily life and is not worshipped. Distant from him is heaven, a concept of a great power in the city. Barely anthropomorphized, present in forms and particularly enlightening and manifested in the thunderbolts, which are numerous because of the violence of the storms. Let me read over that one. Let me tell you something. Did you see how they put he broke them off from the reeds? That was a direct attempt at concealment of the Anunnaki in Africa. That was direct concealment. You see, when Inky touched down, he built his house among the reeds. He spoke in many poems. They have many poems about Inky in the reeds. How he parted the reeds and built his home in the middle between two nations, right? So, and this man who wrote this book know that them inky people. But he said this is how he described the inky, so you can just completely not know what's going on. It's a way to say something where you still don't get no information. Y'all gotta learn to look with your third eye on this. Watch this. What he said. The Zulu have a conception of a high God. They monotheistic. They don't want to admit that. Who broke off from the nations from a reed bed. They said the Zulu have a conception of a high God who broke off the nations from a reed bed, but he plays a little part in their daily life and is not worshipped. And that would be Inky. Some of the first people ever created, sitting here saying that he came and split the reeds, and then the Sumerians did too. And so what you have to do sometime is get a map. So I'm working on it right now to get a map put up so that I can show you this stuff. Because look, I'm talking about the Zulu nation, and then I flew way over here talking about Inky in the Reed March, right? How about the names of everything changed so much? It's probably the same place that I'm talking about, but they changed the names so much over time. So if you have like a biblical Bible, it'll have some, a biblical map, it'll have some good stuff in it that you can reference, but they got some maps older than that you can reference too. So it really makes it hard. But I'm telling you, these Zulu tribes said directly, we believe in Inky. And that is the straightest answer, one of the straightest answers I ever heard. But he was not gonna tell you no Inky mess. No, no. He said some god of the reach or something like that. But they definitely believe in Inky. Okay, because that is his description of when he touched down. The Sumerian said when he touched down, he parted the reeds. And so the Bible has switched it up to say he made mass and did that. But in the Sumerian text, it said he parted the reeds. And so these people said that their God, the Zulus, worship the God that parted the reeds. They are worshiping the second God. Because the first one that came, he seeded the earth and he was killed. But the second one that came is the one they're worshiping, the one who opened up the marsh. The one, see, he didn't plant the marsh. The one that came first put the marsh down. He just came and made a home in the marsh, but the marsh was already there because that one had came and seeded the place already. Okay, so I have to tell you so we can get it right. So we can get it right, right? You want to know? Okay, so these people actually are one of the few religions that worship, they have a realistic view. And then they even said he don't come around, so we ain't wasting our time. Okay. Um, okay, so this is what they said about the thunder. Okay. Distinct from his own heaven, wait a minute, distinct from him is heaven. Okay, so they want to go to heaven, but it's not with him. And then it said a concept of great power in the sky, barely anthropomorphized, present in storms and particularly in lightning and manifesting in the thunderbolts, which are numerous because of the violence of the storms. These thunderbolts are thought to be the excretion of a thunderbird. Heaven is to believed to influence certain persons who begin to get drowsy, become ill, and wander far from the inhabitants of men. They are then initiated as heaven doctors and can plant magical substances around villages to protect them from lightning. While during storms, they go out of the hilltops and fight the storms with weapons and magic. Several people are killed each year by lightning, and these magicians are much respected. No comment. Yeah, they're trying to harness the fire. I kind of feel sorry for them. But this was in 1900. Um, these beliefs about lightning are not reconciled with the idea that dangerous for lightnings is female. Oh, they gave them sexes. The one that made two, boom, that's the female. But then the one that's with harmless sheet lightning is male, the little flat on the ground, that's the male. And the dangerous shit, that's the female. Or with the belief in a goddess who is supposed to make the rain and who is associated with the rainbow, which is believed to be the raptor of her hut in the sky. This goddess is graphically described, presenting the appearance of a beautiful landscape with verdant forest on some parts of her body, grass covered slopes on other parts, and cultivated slopes on others, robed in light as a garment. The Zulu had the myths of origin or of creation. See? They had the Sumerian terrors. They had the horns of creation. I'm telling you the truth. And these is from some Zulus, baby. These the real deal. These them. This is them. This is them. Okay. This is them. Right? And they're telling you about the true creation that I was speaking on. You gotta see my little, they understood this just like I'm telling you. They had the ancient writing. Um, these beliefs about lightning are not reconciled with the idea that dangerous forked lightning is female, while harmless sheet lightning is male, or with the belief in a goddess who is supposed to make the rain and who is associated with this rainbow, who is believed to be rather of her the rafters of her house in the sky. This goddess is described as having a lush body and everything, but it's grass growing in all the right places. And the Zulu had few myths of origin or of creation, but they speak of the goddess who is a maiden as having come from heaven to teach people to make beer, to plant, to harvest, and all the useful arts. The most important spiritual beings of Zulu beliefs are the spirits of their ancestors. These are believed to live below the earth or in the sky, or to appear in the villages in the form of particular kinds of snakes. Sometimes dangerous species, but let me see some. My glasses, please. Sometimes dangerous species of snakes, sometimes harmless species, but they're all believed to behave peaceably and to be recognized as their deceased inhabitants as marks on the body. So they're saying, oh, that one got an X on him. He looked like Uncle Willie. The ancestors are one of the two principal agencies in Zulu belief, influencing good and ill fortune. They expect their descendants who related to them by present through males to place all milk and beer in the great hut of the village for them to taste and to pour it into the ground of the cattle corral round which houses are built in periodic offerings. They also require that sacrifices of cattle be offered to them. So they sacrifice, they do the blood sacrifice just like in the old days in the Bible. And this is before 1900, and they still out there sacrificing cows. They still do that for a long time. But it's something in this part right here I'm itching to talk to you about. But I can't talk to you about it until Monday at 9. Join me. So they believed in snakes. They allowed them to hang around, say they was their ancestors. Their ancestors come back as snakes. Those related to them by descent through males. To place all milk and beer in the great hut. They're going to share it with them and everything. They're going to drink milk with them. They're going to drink beer with them. Now, that was a little skirmish, right? They probably had that shaman sitting up there like, yeah, bring that milk and that beer so I can give it to your ancestor. I ain't gonna lie, that's how religion started. hmm They also required that sacrifices of cattle be offered to them. Should they descendants neglect to make these offerings, the ancestors will send disease. and they will also do so if their descendants default in their obligations to other kinsmen. They are prayed to at ceremonies for birth, initiation, marriage, and at funerals, and often at sowing first fruits and harvest, as well as on other occasions. The ancestors of kings and chiefs look after their political dependents. During illness, diviners of various kinds are consulted to find which ancestor is sending the misfortune so that it can be besought to remove the disease. It is believed that the male ancestors are reasonably and will remove the misfortune if it has been sent for neglect of offerings, or when the breach of obligation which provoked this affliction has been redressed. On the other hand, female ancestor fears are capricious and may allow the misfortune to continue even after amends have been made. Just like us, ain't it? That's just like us. I thought about it. Jay was going to get paid and still actually, but that is, whoa, whoa, whoa. Inherently evil females. This belief, like the belief in the femaleness of forked lightning, reflects a deep seated conception in Zulu belief that femininity is inherently full of threatening, evil, occult power. It'd be so good. They'd be like, it's evil. This fear appears in the many taboos that attach to menstruating women and their influxes, which threaten all things male and all viral enterprises. Because they treated her like she was cursed when she had a cycle, but that's 12 times a year. They're going to be treating you like cursed the whole. I mean, that's really bad. She only spent half of her time out that cave. Ugh. So they felt threatened when the woman bled. The belief is marked in a distinction made between sorcerers and witches, who, like the ancestral spirits, are occult agencies of good and evil. The Zulu have a very rich assortment of magical substances to treat disease in humans and livestock, 50% of which achieve their intended purpose. Some of them actually working, and they said different things. It ain't all. It's shamans. Shamans do stuff. Ooh, I'm looking greasy. Shamans. The Zulu have a variety of rich assortment of magical substances to treat diseases and livestock, cattle and crops, to protect themselves against thieves and lightning, to influence those in power, to reinforce murders, to reintroduce murders into social life, and so forth. So after somebody murdered somebody, they had to reintroduce them into social life. Why is that? Why would you need to be re-entered into social life after you murder somebody? Some of these substances are also believed to be used for sorcery, for making others fall ill, or even to kill them. It is believed that men and not women make the conscious moral decision to learn these evil arts. Men are evil deliberately, but women become witches by an inherent evil in their ferocious sexuality, which attracts to them sexual familiars who then demand the lives of the close kinsmen of the husband or of the children by his other wives. There's inherent evil in femininity since a woman does not deliberately seek a familiar. On the other hand, women also contain much occult power for good. The great majority of those who become possessed by ancestral spirits, which speak through them and divine the cause of illness and dictate cures, are women. Nonetheless, if a woman for a woman to become socially valuable in this way, she has to pass through a very painful illness. In addition, a woman provides rituals of fruitfulness. Pregnant women perform rites to bless the crops, and women and girls enact ceremonies to the maiden goddess at seed time and when blight affects the rain. So they got woman shamans. Didn't you see that? They got woman shamans. Oh, you didn't see it, but I did. But I'm going to show you this. Mm-hmm. Look at this. That's how the tribe look. Yeah, they look pretty rough. See that? Can you see it? Alright. So that's how it was looking when he went over there. And this book was kind of old. It was written way back, but if you thinking of 1900, that was 100 years ago. It was 100 years ago. I mean 1,000. I'm sorry, but 1,000 years ago, even recent, I've seen some tribes still wearing the feathers on the booty. That's the native dress, you know. Um, songs of hate. That's what they just said. Songs of hate. Check this out. These ceremonies exhibit the ritualization of social roles and relationships, which are characteristic of tribal societies. And supplicating at seed time for a good harvest, the young unmarried girls would don men's garment and carry shields and spears. They drove out the cattle to pasture and milk them. Meanwhile, their mothers planted a garden far out in the veld and poured their libation of beer to the goddess. Therefore, this garden was neglected. No, I'm sorry. Thereafter, this garden was. At various stages of the ceremony, women and girls went naked and sang lewd sounds. Men and boys hid inside their huts and might not go near the females. If they do, they were attacked by the women. Zulu warriors and the maidens who have been given to them in marriage perform a dance. It's like a gift. They're given away like cattle. Although women are regarded as being inherently evil, they also contain much occult power for good. That's number one. In order to understand how this ceremony so expressive of conflicts in society operated, it is necessary to probe deeply into the position of women. The present writer was maintained that women position in Zulu society was highly ambivalent. The woman was expected to bear many sons to strengthen the agnatic lineage of her husband, and it was feared that if she was barren, she might turn into witchcraft. And she was generally treated very harshly by others. If she couldn't have no kids, she was going to get treated bad, really bad, because she didn't have no kids. They still do that to women today. When I went to Africa, if you they feel like if you don't make them if you can't make a baby, you're useless, because they don't feel like feeding you. Because I mean, if you can't make a baby, they're gonna get rid of you and put you out the village. Even when women get old, they just do that to them anyway. They try to make a reason. Now they're saying they put them out because they witches. So on the other hand, when a woman produces sons, she in fact produces competitors for the limited property and social positions in the line, thus introducing strife into the line that was supposed to be strengthened. It is argued that the occult believes that women concealed this deep contradiction in their social position, and that the rights previously mentioned, The ambivalent emotions generated were transposed to social ends. Similar analysis can be applied to the national ceremonies performed at festivals of the first fruits. During these ceremonies, warriors sang songs of hate and hurled insults against the king in order to strengthen the nation through the king. Comparative research shows that such ceremonies occur where civil war and royal assassination are endemic, but where king and subjects are not cut off from one another by class barriers. The symbolic representation of deep existing conflicts seems to release emotions which become fixed positivity on socially approved groups and values. Out of many Zulu who have been converted to Christianity since 1880, the majority are women. As in European Christianity, many sects have developed and thought about South Africa. They are markedly influenced by the color bar under apartheid. Some Zulu independent sects are organized as are mission churches. Others are syncretistic of Zulu and Christian belief and combine possession by the Holy Spirit, speaking with tongues, laying on of hands for healing, cults against witchcraft and sorcery, with sometimes the ancestral spirits reappearing as angels. So that was a really diverse religion, okay, because they have a God, but he left. So they worship a woman god and do what they want to do. They must bury their dead. Um, I'm tired. I do this every time. I try to work and then come in here. I gotta quit. Go take a nap. I'll be back.